At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. In the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name's General G. Let's begin. Up, down, up, down, up, down. It's simple, people. Sergeant Reina Torres's jaw knotted with impatience as she watched the chaos unfold. 30 gyron, bipedal creatures sheathed in overlapping dermal plating, attempting jumping jacks. The result triggered a violent geological event. Their heavy bodies, built for stability, thumped against the dusty ground. Their primary arms flailed, while their two shorter, more powerful anchoring limbs scraped at the air. Their forest green and earth-brown plating clattered like a stack of ceramic tiles thrown down stone stairs. One gyron, a poet named Lel, tripped over his own anchor limbs and rolled into his neighbor, triggering a chain reaction that sent 3 of them to the ground in a heap of tangled limbs and groans. Joris Tell, Reina's liaison and resident biologist, stood beside her. His muted green plating rasped as he shifted his weight. She'd learned his tells. That specific rasp meant he weighed his words. "Sergeant," he said, his voice a steady baritone, "perhaps we should reevaluate how we're starting." "The goal is move your body fast," Reina said, her gaze fixed on the platoon. "It's a universal concept." "Is it?" Joris tilted his head. "For a gyron, rapid, repetitive motion signifies agriculture, tilling soil, harvesting spore stalks. A group activity, they follow a communal rhythm. This individual flailing lacks fertile soil in their neurology." Reina huffed a sharp breath and planted her hands on her hips. Her nascent civil defense corps looked more like a failed pottery class. "Fine, at ease," she barked. The standing gyron halted, their breathing heavy. The ones on the ground let their heads loll back. She walked the line, her worn combat boots kicking up ochre dust. The repurposed agricultural commune was a long way from a troop transport's vibrating hull. The pay secured her daughter's future, the one reason she'd taken a job on a planet where the locals considered a warm-up a theological debate. "Name and profession?" she said to the first gyron in line, a sturdy individual with plating the color of rich loam. "Galt, spore farmer, 3rd generation." "Right. Next?" "Lel, I compose verse." "Fantastic." She moved on, cataloging 2 more farmers, a watercolorist, a stonemason, and several other artisans and agrarians. Then she reached the line's end. He loomed a full head taller than the others, his plating a mottled gray and thicker. A lightweight metallic scaffolding, an external chrysalis, gleamed on his back and shoulders, bolted there in the system's yellow starlight. He stared at his own feet, his shoulders hunched. "And you?" Reina asked, her voice a little softer. He flinched. "Ren," he whispered, his voice a thread of a sound. "Ren what?" "Just Ren." Joris stepped forward. "This is Ren, the apprentice Aegeus Warden." Reina leaned in, her eyes narrowing. The Aegeus Warden. She'd read the file. The gyron answer to a crisis, a single bio-armored warrior cultivated over 2 centuries. This kid looked like he'd apologize to a door for bumping into it. "How old are you, Ren?" she asked. 82 harvest seasons, Sergeant." A toddler, by their standards. The scaffolding's design applied steady, decades-long pressure, guiding his long plating into its final, impenetrable interlocking form. The device was squeezing him into a hero's shape. His gaze stayed locked on the ground. "All right, you lot," Reina called out, turning back to the group. "Let's talk about why you're doing push-ups in your own dirt. Joris, if you would." Joris nodded, tapping a device on his wrist. A hologram bloomed above them, warping the air with light. The hologram showed a creature of staggering scale, its body a serpentine ribbon of light and lens-like membranes that dwarfed the stars around it, like a nebula had gained sentience. "This is the glimmer worm," Joris explained, his voice adopting a lecturer's tone. "A creature of the void, ecologically vital in ways we are only now comprehending. It follows ancient migratory paths. The image shifted, now showing the worm approaching a massive flower-like station in high orbit. Tendrils of light extended from the creature, wrapping around the station. The station, one of 10, fractured, its light dimming. Unfortunately, Joris continued, its current path intersects with our orbital energy collector ring. It's grazing. Losing a single collector is manageable. Losing the ring means planetary famine with one harvest season. It's worse than grazing, Raina cut in. Tell them about the static. Joris's plating rasped. The worm emits a powerful bioelectric field. We call it neural static. It overwhelms complex nervous systems, inducing a feedback loop of confusion, panic, and sensory overload. For a socially interconnected species like ours, the effect unravels us. Raina nodded. Fighting required thinking, and the static stripped that away. So what do we know about its biology? What does it want? Why does it eat your power grid? Joris looked down, a gesture Raina now recognized as frustration. Officially, very little. The Deep Council sees a pest, so it only funds pest control studies. My own work analyzing its residual energy signatures and theorizing its metabolic needs remains a low-priority academic project. Right, Raina said with a wry smile. Politics. Some things are the same everywhere. She looked at her trainees' faces. A poet, some farmers, an artist, and a kid enduring a slow torture to become a tank. The group resembled an artist's cooperative more than a platoon. Okay, she said, her voice cutting through the morning air. New plan. Forget the jumping jacks. Everybody, grab the biggest rock you can carry. Petrified megaflora heartwood formed the deep council chamber. Light filtered down from phosphorescent fungal veins, webbing the high ceiling, casting a soft glow on the dozen gyrans seated in a semicircle. Their plating matched the chamber walls' color, fissured with age. Only the soft rustle of their robes and the sharp crack of Raina's boots on the stone floor broke the silence. Joris stood beside her, a supportive presence. She presented her 10-week syllabus, a condensed training regimen focused on small unit tactics, drone operations, and rapid improvisation. The plan drew from centuries of human conflict. When she finished, the rustling stopped. 12 pairs of ancient eyes regarded her. Root Speaker Kron, the oldest of the group, broke the silence, his voice rustling like dry leaves. He slowly raised a hand toward a massive mural dominating the far wall. The mural depicted the 200-year cultivation of an Aegis Warden, a slow process of training, biological augmentation, and societal reverence. We spend 2 centuries to form a single defender, Kron intoned, looking down at Raina with his lip plates curled. A landmark of our culture, a testament to patience. You propose to abolish that wisdom with this frantic scrambling. Raina held his gaze, her posture firm. She'd faced down generals with more firepower than this entire planet possessed. She could handle a condescending gyran in a robe. Root Speaker, with all due respect, you have a house fire, she said, her voice even and clear, resonating in the chamber. You need a fire brigade. We can debate cathedral blueprints later. Humans can make a soldier in 10 weeks. That's the service you paid for. The council members shifted, their plating scraping against the stone. Joris's anchor limbs twitched slightly at his sides. Kron's eyes narrowed. Your methods are violent, Kron said. They are discordant. They risk damaging the very fabric of the individuals you instruct. We have seen the reports. Our apprentice warden suffers distress. Ren is a trainee, Raina countered. Stress is part of the work. He'll be fine. Will he? Kron's voice grew dangerously soft. Or will your process shatter a vessel that has taken nearly a century to shape? The debate continued, but her analogy had found its mark. The collectors were failing. The house burned. They granted her conditional approval, their assent marked by a wave of scraping plating and disapproving clicks. As she and Joris walked out of the chamber, back into the warm air, He clicked, a low series she now recognized as relief. "That was direct," he said. "It's the only way I know," Raina replied, squinting into the sun. "They hired a contractor, they get contractor results." "They hired a human," Joris corrected, his tone mild. "I believe they now understand the distinction." Raina grunted. She felt Root Speaker Crone's gaze on her back. This was more than a mission. It was an argument she had to win. The Gyran struggled with the rocks. Their clumsy, individualistic movements faltered. Raina, frustrated, ended the morning's physical training and dismissed the platoon for their midday meal and field work. She watched from a hilltop as they moved into the vast agricultural communes surrounding the training ground. Then the connection clicked. They worked in teams, lifting heavy hydroponic trays and nutrient substrate sacks. Their slow movements were powerful and synchronized. They moved as one organism, their bodies a network of levers and anchors. As they worked, they chanted, low, resonant songs of rhythmic vibration over melody, a hum that bound them, coordinating their every lift and step. Her mistake was trying to teach them to be human soldiers. She needed to teach them to be better Gyran defenders. The next morning, the rocks were gone. Heavy cast-iron spheres with thick handles, kettlebells, stood in their place. She'd had the base fabricator work all night. "All right, listen up," she announced to the confused platoon. "Forget everything I told you yesterday. We're doing this your way." She picked up a kettlebell. "This is a seed sack. This is a tray. We'll work the fields." She led them through a series of exercises based on their farming motions. Deep squats, coordinated lifts, swings that mimicked spore sowing. At first, they hesitated. Then she gave another order. "Sing," she said. "Give me one of your work chants." Lel the poet hummed a low chant. A few others joined in, then more, until the entire platoon moved to the ancient rhythm. Their individual stumbles smoothed into a single powerful pulse. The kettlebells rose and fell in unison. They found their rhythm. A smile touched Raina's lips. This she could work with. Later that day, she sat with Joris in his makeshift biology lab, a clean white tent filled with humming analyzers and sample trays. "I've been analyzing the neural statics waveform," Joris said, pointing to a complex, chaotic spiral on a monitor. "It's psychic noise, a byproduct of the worm's metabolism. A shared neural frequency, a low-level biological broadcast, reinforces our social bonds. The static overwhelms that frequency. It creates a panicked feedback loop that cascades through our connections." Raina leaned forward, tapping the screen. "A feedback loop? So one person panics and it infects the others?" "Precisely. A single point of failure can unravel the whole system." "The chanting," Raina said, the idea solidifying. "In the fields, they work as one. That rhythm, that harmony, could it act as a defense?" Joris's plating rasped. "A conscious, regulated harmony, a shared frequency. It could act as a mental anchor, a form of collective biofeedback that lets each individual consciously regulate their own neural state against the external noise." He looked at her, his dark eyes wide. By rooting themselves in their own collective song, they could potentially ignore the worms. "We're adding choir practice to the syllabus," Raina said, "right after kettlebells." Joris stared at her, his head tilted. "You see the tool's shape by observing the hand that will hold it." "I'm a glorified gym teacher, Joris," she said, shrugging one shoulder, "but I know my students." "It's beautiful!" Galt, the farmer, spoke the words, his voice filled with a reverence echoing across the bridge of the repurposed survey ship, the Diligent Seed. On the main bridge viewport, the glimmer worm drifted into view. A living constellation drifted there, kilometers long, light refracting through its immense lens-like structures in a silent cosmic drift. Their first real test began. Joris deployed a probe he'd designated to mimic an orbital collector's energy signature a safe distance from the worm. Raina framed it for the crew as a simple diagnostic run. "Here it comes," Joris said, his voice calm, though she saw the tension in his shoulders. "It's altering its trajectory. It's following the probe." Triumphant backslaps and quiet cheers broke out on the bridge. The poet Lel was already composing a verse in his head. Ren, stationed at a secondary monitoring console, allowed himself a small, hesitant smile. For the first time, this all felt real, possible. Then the neural static's first wave flooded the ship. An insidious wrongness crawled directly into the brainstem. A migraine's color and hot metal's taste. 1,000 voices whispering nonsense in your ear while you tried to solve a complex math problem. A dull headache and a spike of irritation jabbed Raina. Her jaw tightened, and she focused on her console. Lel, the poet, wept, tears tracing paths through the fine dust on his plating. Galt, the farmer, froze at his console, his hands hovering over the controls. "It's ignoring the lure," Joris said, his voice strained. He fought the static, but it cost him. "Its instincts. They must detect the signal as false." On the viewport, the magnificent creature veered, its vast form turning away from the probe and back toward the nearest orbital collector's faint, distant light. It sniffed their trap and dismissed it. On the bridge, the quiet weeping continued. The cheers died in their throats. They all looked down at the floor plating. Raina's stomach tightened. 10 weeks. The deadline felt like a closing fist. That evening, back at the training grounds, the cool air carried night-blooming florist scent. Raina had the team gather around a large, crackling campfire. Only the burning wood spit and pop broke the silence. They all stared into the fire, heads bowed. Raina waited a long moment, letting the fire crackle between them before she spoke. "Talk to me," she said, her voice soft. "What did you feel? What went wrong?" The quiet colorist, a quiet Gyran named Pia, spoke first. "All the colors screamed. The right one escaped me." Galt, the farmer, looked up, his eyes wide and distant. "I forgot how to use my hands. They were objects at the end of my arms." Then a low cracking whisper came from the fireflight's edge. Ren spoke. He wrapped his massive arms around his knees, making himself smaller. "I was the most afraid," he admitted, his voice a near whisper. The entire group went still, listening. "The static was like the scaffolding, like it was crushing me, but from the inside out. My breath hitched in my throat. I have failed," he said, his voice breaking. "I have failed the Aegeus Warden title." The finality in his tone settled over the group. Raina leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "My first live fire exercise in basic," she said, her voice drawing them in. "I was on the grenade range. Simple task. Pull pin, throw shiny thing over the wall. Except I got nervous. My hands were sweating. I pulled the pin, threw, and the grenade slipped. It hit the wall's top and bounced back into the pit with me and my drill instructor." The Gyran stared at her, horrified. "My DI," she continued with a wry grin, "was a huge man with a small vocabulary. He said 2 of his favorite words, kicked the grenade into the disposal sump, and tackled me to the ground an instant before it went off. The concussion rattled my bones. Afterward, he stood me up, dusted me off, and said, 'Well, Torres, you found a new and exciting way to screw that up. Don't do it again.' And then he made me throw 50 dummy grenades until my arm was numb." She looked around the fire at their confused faces. "The point is, his message was simple. Collect data. The data was, don't drop the damn grenade." She looked directly at Ren. "Today gave us successful data. We learned the beast outsmarted us. It's seeking a meal, and we learned exactly what the static feels like at that range. Now we have a baseline. Now we can prepare for it." Heads lifted up. A few Gyran murmured to each other. They gathered intelligence. Ren looked at her, his eyes still shadowed with shame, but with a flicker of understanding. After the team dispersed, drifting off to their quarters with a lighter step, Joris remained by the fire with Raina. "Masterful," he said in a low voice, watching the embers glow. "You took their shame and reforged it into experience." Raina nodded, poking the fire with a stick. "It's what drill instructors do. We break you down, sure, but we're also supposed to put you back together, stronger." For a minute, they stood together, watching the fire die down. "Morale has cratered," Raina said a few days later, pacing in front of Joris. "They're working, but they're timid. They're afraid to make a mistake." "Failure stuns, my people," Joris admitted. "We design our long-term projects to engineer it out of the equation. We struggle to improvise under pressure." "Then we need to change the pressure," Raina said. "We'll have a party." Joris stared at her. "A mandatory skills demonstration night," she corrected. "I want to see what they can do when the stakes involve personal pride instead of planetary survival." The announcement confused the Gyran, but intrigued them. That night, they gathered in the commune's main hall. Laughter echoed off the high ceiling. Lel the poet stood and performed a stirring epic he'd composed about their training, somehow making kettlebell swings and rhythmic chanting sound like a heroic saga. The platoon roared with approval. Pia, the watercolorist, set up an easel and, using a bioluminescent pigment palette, demonstrated how she could mix them to perfectly mimic any color or energy signature shown to her. For her finale, she perfectly replicated the glimmerworm's fluid shifting light on her canvas. Then Galt, the quiet spore farmer, stepped forward. He held a control unit, and with a few flicks of his fingers, 3 agricultural sprayer drones lifted off from outside, zipping into the hall through the high cargo doors. He put them through their paces, weaving them in, out, and around each other in impossibly intricate patterns, earning Raina's silent admiration. She watched the drones, their sprayer nozzles able to deliver a fine mist over a wide area. She looked at Pia's painting, which glowed with the worm's exact energy signature. She looked at Joris. "That nutrient formula you've been working on," she said, her voice low and urgent, keeping her eyes on the drones. "The one you synthesized from the worm's energy leavings? Can you make it glow like that?" Joris followed her gaze from the drones to the painting and back. His anchor limbs twitched at his sides, a gesture she now knew meant intense excitement. "The missing catalyst," he said, the words tumbling out. "Of course! The worm hunted a chemical and an optical signature. The formula was inert because the creature was blind to it. Sergeant, I believe I can." Raina grinned. "Then I think it's time we set the dinner table." "Entering simulation," a calm, automated voice announced. Wren stood on the full-scale mock-up of the Diligent Seeds bridge. The mock-up was an exact replica, down to the scuff marks on the floor plates. He took a deep breath. The big test began. A simulated close flyby of the glimmerworm, complete with a device that mimicked the neural static. "All right, people, you know the procedure." Raina's voice came over the comms from the observation booth. "It will get loud in your heads. Trust the harmony. Trust your team. Wren, you're on secondary systems monitoring. Keep your eyes on the lights. Call out if anything goes red." "Yes, Sergeant," he whispered. The simulation engaged. The main viewport showed the worm's luminescent form growing closer. The static generator's low thrum started, and nauseating mental chaos crept in at the edges of his consciousness. "Engage harmony," Joris commanded from the captain's chair. The crew chanted its focusing song. Lel started the rhythm, and the others joined in, their voices blending into a low, resonant hum, vibrating through the deck plates. Wren added his own deep bass, and the floor under his feet felt solid again. The static, screaming colors receded, held at bay by the unified sound. The chant worked. Unfamiliar confidence surged through him. His hands, for once, held steady on the console. "Stand by," Raina's voice cut in. "Simulation includes a random intensity spike. 30 seconds. The crew braced. The chant held steady. Wren watched his console, the green lights a comforting sight. He felt the static pressing against their mental shield, a predator searching for a crack. The spike hit like a physical blow, a concussive wave of neurological chaos. The harmony wavered as several Gyron gasped. In that weak instant, the static poured in. For Ren, the static became a nightmare. His scaffolding's weight, his title, and 100 years of expectation crashed down on him. The thought, "I'm failing," screamed in his mind, and everything else vanished into a panicked vortex. He lost the chant, the bridge, himself. He flailed, a scream building in his throat, his armored body lashing out blindly. His back slammed into the secondary systems console, buckling the steel frame. Metal shrieked, a spark fountain erupted. The console crumpled. Alarms blared, real alarms this time. The bridge lights flickered, leaving them in emergency lighting's red glow. The simulation crashed. Ren stared at the sparking, ruined console. The alarm shrieked, the only sound echoing the scream in his head. He wished the floor would fracture and swallow him. The shriek in his head deafened him to the simulator tech's mayday call. Root Speaker Crone, alerted by an automated damage report, arrived at the training grounds less than an hour later. He moved with a glacier's slow authority, and the light dulled on his ancient matte plating. He strode past the customary greetings. "You have broken him," Crone stated, his dry leaf voice tight. He stood before Raina in the damaged simulator's shadow, two of his attendants flanking him. "Our most valuable asset, a century of investment, and you have shattered him with your reckless, violent methods. This experiment is over." Raina, her face grim, held her position. "The equipment is broken, Root Speaker. Ren is shaken, but he'll recover." "He is a weapon turned on its wielder," Crone countered scornfully. "We will remove him from your unit and return him to his contemplative studies to see if we can undo the damage. You confine your training to the lesser subjects." "No." The quiet word landed in the space between them with granite's weight. Crone's eyes narrowed. "You refuse a directive from this council?" "I take full responsibility for what happened," Raina said, her voice steely. "I pushed him too hard, too fast. That's on me. But telling a scared kid he's a failure will only hurt him. He's part of this unit. He stays." Her words were a direct challenge. Crone stared at her for a long moment, then gave a curt, disgusted nod and turned, sweeping away. Raina found Ren by a small stream trickling through the commune. He was on his knees in the soft mud, clumsily unbolting his scaffolding's clasps. His hands shook too badly. "The bolts are seized," he mumbled as she approached, his gaze fixed on his shaking hands. "I want to retire from being an Aegis Warden." Raina sat down on the grassy bank beside him. She sat with him for a long time, listening to the water's gurgle. "You know what your biggest weakness is, Ren?" she finally asked. He flinched, his shoulders rounding. "I am a coward." "No," she said. "Your weakness is thinking your only job is to be a weapon. An Aegis Warden is a title, it's a role. It's separate from who you are. Who you are is the strongest person on this entire planet. I've seen your physical evals. You can bend girders." He looked up, confused. "What good is that if my mind is weak?" "We made a mistake," Raina said, meeting his gaze. "I made a mistake. We tried to make you a pilot, a technician. We need something different from you. Your strength has a higher purpose than hitting things, Ren. It's for holding them up." She leaned forward. "I'm giving you a new role. Forget being a pilot or a console jockey. You are the anchor. If a conduit blows or a bulkhead buckles, your job is to stand in the way. Your job is to physically defend the core systems and the crew. Your job is to hold the line so everyone else can do theirs. Can you do that?" Ren looked down at his own massive hands, then back at her. He looked at her and saw a problem and a solution. For the first time since she had arrived on this world, he met her gaze directly. "Yes," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I can do that." "You propose to feed our destroyer?" Root Speaker Crone's voice laced with incredulity. Raina and Joris stood before the council once more, and the air in the chamber crackled. "We propose to guide it," Raina corrected, her tone even. She gestured to the projection shimmering between them. "The glimmer worm is hungry. Our first lure failed because it was an empty promise. This time, we're offering it a full meal." Joris stepped forward. "I have successfully synthesized the unique bioluminescent nutrient the worm feeds on. Our team's watercolorist, Pia, has helped me tune the slurry to glow with the optimal signature the creature seeks. The slurry is a super-concentrated version of its natural food." The projection shifted, showing an agricultural drone swarm, the kind Galt had demonstrated. "These drones, piloted by Galt and his team, will carry the slurry," Raina explained. "We will cooperate with its instincts," she said, her gaze sweeping across the assembled Root speakers. "We will use the drones to create a breadcrumb trail of food, leading it away from the collector ring and onto a new, safe migratory path." The projection zoomed out, showing the worm's current trajectory and a proposed new one. "This new route," Joris added, pointing to a faint swirling nebula on the star chart, "passes through a dense, naturally occurring cosmic dust cloud. My long-range scans confirm this cloud contains the very same nutrients we have synthesized. We will lead it to a new, sustainable feeding ground. We will solve this problem permanently." Crone's plating rattled in protest, but the other council members murmured among themselves. Their collectors were failing. Their timeline shrank. The old ways had failed. The council overruled Crone. They gave Raina a final reluctant go-ahead. Her contract and their world's fate rested on a crop duster swarm and a glorified food delivery service. In Joris's lab, now a full production facility, nutrient slurry vats swirled, glowing with an ethereal pulsing light. Gyron, who had been farmers just weeks ago, now worked as lab technicians, monitoring temperatures and chemical balances under Joris's watchful eye. In the main commune hangar, Galt stood like a contractor before a drone orchestra. He and his pilot team, all former farmers, swarmed over the agricultural machines. They fitted them with larger tanks for the slurry, reinforced their shielding, and calibrated their thrusters for deep space. Their spare movements showed certainty. In the main hall, Lel the poet led the remaining crew. They practiced their focusing chant until it was second nature. And in the ship's simulator center, Ren worked alone. He moved with steady purpose, securing and reinforcing key ship components. He tested blast doors, braced power conduits, and memorized the ship's structural weak points. Raina walked by, giving him an approving nod. He returned it with a small, confident smile. He was the anchor. "All stations, report status." Raina's voice sounded calm and steady over the comms. "Drone swarm is green. All units online and carrying full payloads," Galt reported from the flight control station. "Navigation is green. We are holding position at the calculated intercept point," came the reply from the helm. "Life support is green. Biofeedback harmony is stable," Joris added from his post beside her. The Gyron Civil Corps ship, the Diligent Seed, hung against the vast starfield. Below them, the swarm of 100 modified agricultural drones held formation. On the main viewport, a light distortion in the distance swelled. The glimmer worm. "All right, Galt," Raina said. "Let's ring the dinner bell. Launch first volley." "Copy that. Releasing first drone volley." 10 drones detached from the main swarm and accelerated forward, their tanks flaring with light. Kilometers away, the glimmer worm detected the offering. Its slow, inexorable path toward the collector ring wavered. It turned. "Here it comes," Joris murmured. "Static field is building." "You heard him, people," Raina ordered. "Sing!" The crew chanted. The low, resonant hum filled the ship, a harmony shield. The neural static's first tendrils washed over them, a chaotic whisper. The chant held it at bay. The glimmerworm reached the first drone cluster. The creature consumed them in a beautiful, light-filled implosion. A collective, quiet sigh of relief went through the bridge. "It's working," Galt breathed. "Phase 1 complete." "Don't celebrate yet," Raina said, her eyes fixed on the viewport. "Now we have to get it to follow us home." Galt and his pilots released their drone payloads in sequence, creating a phosphorescent, nourishing pathway through deep space. The glimmerworm followed, majestic and serene, consuming each breadcrumb with a silent light pulse. They led the giant. But as they drew the worm further along, they had to move the diligent seed closer to maintain drone swarm control. And the closer they got, the more intense the neural static became. It pressed in on the ship, growing from a whisper to a roar. The focusing chant wavered, the harmony thinning as the pressure grew. On the bridge, plating rasped with tension. "Static is approaching the red line," Joris warned, his own voice tight. "Another surge like that, and our harmony may fail." One of Galt's pilots, a young farmer named Tem, fumbled his controls. His drone, part of the next volley, shot off course, breaking the breadcrumb trail's line. The glimmerworm, confused by its next meal's erratic path, hesitated. Its fluid motion stopped. The creature's vast, luminous head turned, its attention shifting from the drones toward the diligent seed's much larger, much brighter energy source. The neural pressure spiked. A high-pitched whine filled the bridge as a power conduit near the main cockpit overloaded from the bioelectric stress. It ruptured, spitting a spark shower. A raw energy torrent arced across the deck, straight towards the flight control station where Galt and his pilots fought to regain control. A gray-plated mountain moved. Ren. He threw himself in front of the energy discharge. He grabbed a heavy, meter-thick blast door, knocked from its housing, and shoved it into the arcing energy's path. He braced his armored body against the superheated metal, his anchor limbs digging into the deck plating, his every muscle straining. The energy washed over the door, the air screaming around him, but he held firm. Ren's action gave them the time they needed. Freed from the immediate threat, Galt's hands flew across his console. "Tem, break off! The rest of you, full payload deployment at waypoint Gamma! Make it irresistible!" A brilliant light flare erupted from the drone swarm further along the desired path. A feast laid out for a king. The richer, more concentrated meal drew the glimmerworm's attention away from the ship. It turned its great head, forgot the diligent seed's minor anomaly, and resumed its serene path along the trail. The grand migration was back on, and their anchor held the line, scorched but unbroken. From his station, Joris watched, his breath caught in his throat. He saw, on the gravimetric display, as the last lure drones guided the glimmerworm into the cosmic dust cloud's swirling, gossamer veils. The creature plunged into the cloud, and its bioluminescence, which pulsed with a steady, searching rhythm, now glowed with a deep, satisfied thrum. It was feeding, content. "Trajectory confirmed," Joris announced, his voice thick with emotion. "It's on its new migratory path. The collector ring is safe." The exhausted crew on the bridge held their focusing chant for a moment longer. Then together they let it fall. A ragged, triumphant cheer filled the sudden silence, shaking the entire ship. They had done it. The crew rushed to Ren, whom Galt and Pia helped to his feet. His armor was scorched, and he looked bruised and exhausted, but a wide grin split his face. They surrounded him, patting his armored shell, their hands making dull thuds against the plating that saved them. "You held," Galt said, his voice full of wonder. "By the ancients, you held!" Ren nodded, too breathless to speak. He was their anchor. Raina watched from her command chair, a wide, genuine smile forming. This moment made the whole damn job worthwhile. A week later, the repurposed agricultural commune hosted the planet's biggest celebration in a generation. The planet feted the Gyran Civil Corps, the 10-week militia, as heroes. Music, laughter, and roasting spore stalk smell filled the air. Raina stood to one side, a mug of some pleasantly fermented Gyran beverage in her hand, watching her crew. Galt showed a group of young Gyran how a lure drone worked. Lel performed a new epic poem about Ren, the anchor of the seed. And Ren himself stood with Joris, laughing freely as the biologist explained some complex principle, his posture open and untroubled. He decided to keep the scaffolding as a reminder. A figure blocked the festive lights. Raina turned. Root Speaker Crone stood beside her, his ancient wood-like plating gleaming. "Sergeant Torres," he said, his voice level, carrying a new resonance. "My methods, my beliefs, they proved antiquated for this kind of crisis. Your fire brigade was the precise solution." He nodded once. "On behalf of a grateful council," Crone continued, "I offer you a permanent position. We wish to establish a Gyran Civil Defense Corps, founded on your principles of rapid adaptation, improvisation, and teamwork. We wish you to lead it." Raina's breath caught. The offer meant security she'd only dreamed of. She thought of her daughter, Cora, back home, of the future she tried to build for her. But she also looked out at the celebration, at the community she helped to save, at the team she built from dust and verse and stubbornness. She smiled. "I'll need to renegotiate my contract," she said, "and I'll need a permanent co-trainer." She looked over at Joris, who noticed Crone's arrival and watched them. He met her gaze, and the plating around his neck rasped softly, a sound she now knew intimately.